Hello, everybody. Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Let's go through this game. After beating the computers, finishing it out. So we have the king in check. King's got to move. He gave up the queen instead, so we capture this queen. Play here so that we don't get back rank checkmated. And rook to c3 seems to gather up one more pawn than we would otherwise have. To b8, all these things together for one. So we can get rid of both rooks. Let's see how you do this here. Wanted, dead or alive. Wanted, dead or alive. Okay, so let's review this game of chess. My opponent resigned after move 19. So we're gonna keep that in mind as we move forward, that this game was resigned at move 19 and not to disrespect our opponent's choice to do so. Okay, so what do we have here? Just a standard semi-Slav or Slav. And then I went wide with my bishop development. Why? Because the bishop on c8 is often difficult for black to develop in Queen's Gambit declines and in Slav / semi-Slav systems against a Queen's Gambit central pawn formation. So I want to get this bishop out, the Germans would say that, out of the back rank and into action so I can play e6, be super stable with my center, and who knows, I might be able to trade the bishop for the knight, and even in sometimes doubling white's pawns while doing so. My opponent played what I agree with Torch, or what I agree with the analysis is the best move, knight to e5. This is the best move. Hitting at the bishop, which for all intents and purposes, for all reality, is unprotected. So, for the very moment, this is a really nice outpost. I can avail myself of multiple ways of undoing that, but the knight is, at the moment, the strongest piece on the board. So I must respond to that somehow. And I chose this time to play knight f6 to respond to that. And I thought, if my opponent wants to capture on g4, then I'll just recapture with my knight and have the only developed piece. I'm not losing major material one way or direction or another. But I think black is doing okay here. I say that with some hesitancy because the progress bar has white ahead by more than a pawn. But for the moment, we're going to move on anyway. Uh, that being the case, and part of the progress bar's point is white's move pawn to e4. Knight moves back to someplace safe. h6 isn't good because of bishop takes to h6, g takes h6, and these doubled pawns are pretty bad. Because they're on black's king side, where he's gonna, in most Queen's Gambit declines, black will want a castle kingside. So instead, knight f6 is the correct move. Plus, even if it weren't for that, a knight on the rim is grim. It's an old saying that reminds us that knights on the edge of the board, say at a5, have 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. A knight at the center of the board or near the center of the board has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? And then even worse, if the knight's all the way in the corner, he might only have 2 moves, c7 and b6 in this diagram. Alright, so knights on the rim are grim, and I have my knight centrally located. I can handle a push like pawn to e5. I chose to just get aggressive right off. This is totally aggressive. I'm pretty sure white can trap the knight here. So maybe I wasn't playing with my tournament hat on. Is if white finds the move pawn to f3, the knight's under attack. He's captured here by many different ways that white might choose. Here by the king. Let me make these arrows. Here by the h-pawn. Here by the bishop. Here by the e-pawn. Here by the e-pawn in the other direction. Here by the d-pawn. Here by the pawn at b2. And perhaps also the knight at b1. So we see this knight is going to be trapped. I wouldn't have played that at tournament time controls, but as it happened, my opponent didn't spy that trap or decide to play knight c3 for any host of other reasons, and I didn't spy that trap either, apparently, as I could play the move pawn to e6. And the knight is captured and then recaptured on the e file, and we have sort of this funky pawn configuration here in the sweet center, as well as some of the center squares close to being sweet center. It's kind of a weird. We'll do white as arrows for now, and black as red spots. It's kind of weird, right? It's not clear, from a strictly structural standpoint, that black is even all that bad with the pawn there on e4. For instance, the move f5, while a little bit daring along the h5 to e8 diagonal with potential check, that can be blocked, and then f5 is coming to the rescue of e4. But let's not forget that instead of the check, white might play e takes f6 en passant, so it seems like that's good for white. And then black plays queen takes f6 and has a quite fine position for her queen is going to be exerting influence all over the board from the f6 square without a way for white to kick the white queen, without a way for white to kick the black queen. All right, we all know you don't develop your queen early in the game. There's one thing to notice, though, when we get a little bit more advanced from that, is if she's safe. If you don't develop your queen too early, but if you can develop her to somewhere where it's early in the game, but she's nonetheless safe from attacks by minor pieces or pawns, even, that's not so bad. Queen on f6 after an exchange of pawns on f6. That's after capturing white's pawn on f6 and the en passant capture. That queen's actually not looking so bad. We think of a move like bishop to g5, but that's not on because the bishop's not supported. This is going to take white time to find a place to then follow up with the bishop move, okay? Overall, the queen's doing fine there on f6. So that was part of my reasoning in this clump of central pawns. Queen to e2 is somehow some kind of blunder. I think I found the right move without knowing that this was necessarily going to lead to a serious attack. But queen takes d4 is definitely the right move. We're capturing a pawn on d4. We're going to capture a pawn on e5 soon. Unless I find an alternative move. I think this pawn actually stays there in the actual move list. But now black is ahead by a pawn. Bishop to e3 is a logical move. It's just not the best move, perhaps. In some ways it is. It's the most optimistic. Has the chance that black will capture on e5 or backpedal for reasons that would be not as good as capturing on e5, where black should be headed. Black captures on e5, and then maybe white gets queenside castle in. There's a little bit more room for white's queen to develop so that the white light squared bishop can move out of the way, and ideally black gets a kingside castle in. But that's a little bit ahead of things in terms of optimism. But for just the moment, the move bishop to e3 check, or sorry, the move bishop to e3 is not so bad. We have here that the evaluating engine shows it as an inaccuracy. Maybe it's not a bad one, so we play on. All that being said, black playing bishop to b4 check, that's a killer, honestly, for white. That this is going to put white on his, her, or they heels for a good portion of the game. And it's not liquidating on d2 that's the killer, but some of the follow-up moves. So capturing a pawn on b2, you want to just let white capture on b4 and then be done with it. But I'll have to take that later. Look at how this is called circling the wagons after a technique that was used by United States Army soldiers when they were in one of the not so great pages in American history, pushing Native American Indians back and back and back. One of the things to do if there was trouble would be to circle the wagons, and that part of it is simply descriptive. That you circle the wagons in front of your king as a way of protecting him. Kingside castles. Bishop takes b4. Queen takes b4 check. We have a 2-point material advantage, and the evaluating engine likes very much white's position in addition to that. So out of this 4.2, 2 of it is due to the material that white has ahead. So then there's an additional 2.22 or 2.2 in black's favor, even beyond that. So rook d2 is a sensible move. Black could always just force a repeat here. Or could he might not be able to force a repeat because of queen d2. Yeah, but it's close to being able to forcing a threefold repetition. Black doesn't want that. Black has 2 pawns and more ahead of white. So some sort of straightforward moves. The rook pins himself on d2, so just as we know to do when there's a piece that's pinned, we pile up on the pinned piece. 2 attackers, 2 defenders. It's the focal point of the position. g3 is a smart way to allow the light squared bishop to get into the game, and in some future maybe even castle and get on with things. Except for that the pressure on the d file is still requiring as much defenders as possible. All hands on deck there. Knight d7. I had spent some time contemplating knight to a6. And I said, why? Knight to d7 is just strictly better by way of threatening the e5 pawn. We can still reach c4. I mean, at a6, we either backpedal, hit to the back of our queen, or c7, or back. You know, this is a better move because the pin on the rook does not depend on pressure from d8. So there's some tactics here. The knight is bait. Knight to e5 captures the pawn, but it's total bait because if my opponent captures, then queen takes d2 checkmate. I think these moves were still accurate. This pinned rook is really hampering, it's really cramping a white style, so to say. And knight to f3 check. My opponent resigned here. If the knight goes to, if the king goes to g2 or h1, I think in either event, either black can play a number of moves to finish things off. Knight takes d2, queen takes d3, and then knight takes f1, and then say the king had moved to g2, so then king takes f1, leaves white down a full rook and a number of probably about one or two other pawns as well. So black has an overwhelming material advantage, and this is how it played out against the super strong computer on maximum. Black has way enough material, and we won't even belabor these points. Let's just see them quickly here. The two rooks work together to perform checkmate against the white king, against the white king on f1. That's it. That was a great game, a fun game, and I was really glad to have played it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.